Hello and welcome to the Grumpy Sound Guy Show. I am your host, Mr. J.R. Everhart from CLP Audio and Staging. I am the Grumpy Sound Guy himself, which is kind of just a play on words. You know, it's a industry inside joke that all sound guys are grumpy. I'd like to think that I'm a pretty decent and kind-hearted individual with a great sense of humor. But if you're trying to screw me, you're going to see the grumpy side. So that all happens. Today's going to be, I think, a short video. I'm basically going to tell the story of a nightmare house sound situation we've been talking about. Nightmare house sound guys all through the short form, videos for about a week and a half now. We're about to flip the script on that and have sound guys talk to bands, and we're going to tell some crazy stories about how bands have been complete idiots too. So, because it goes both ways, guys, you know what I mean? But yeah, I had one of my followers call me and gave me a long, in-depth story about what his band has had to deal with a house sound guy, and how that has been quite challenging to navigate. You're going to be kind of shocked and surprised at some of the stuff in this story. So stick around. You do not want to miss a second of today's show. Hey guys, if I can have literally 60 seconds of your time here just to ask you to please subscribe to the channel. It costs absolutely nothing to subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell so you can help us give you more of this content on the free side of the channel. Also, if you're really digging what we're doing here and you're digging the Grumpy Sound Guy content, please consider joining the membership side of the YouTube channel. It costs about $5 a month, so about the price of a Starbucks cup of coffee or whatever. You can become an inner circle supporter of the Grumpy Sound Guy and the content that I'm putting up. We'll get all kinds of really cool one-on-one live chat stuff in there, group chat stuff, all that sort of thing. Plus, you'll get content that is posted there that will never become public, So make sure you get over there and check that out. And thank you for supporting everything that I'm doing here with the Grumpy Sound Guy. Welcome back. Coming to you live from our little rehearsal area. I don't want to call it a studio because it's very lounge worthy and that sort of thing. But it's a little cold in the shop this time of year, so I decided to kind of move things indoors here and let you into my musical world by allowing you into our rehearsal space here and that sort of thing, where we tend to play music and do all the things that we love to do outside of the production world. So today, like I said in the intro, is going to be about a story that I was told from a local band dealing with a local venue with a nightmare sound engineer who is obviously completely off his rocker from some of the things that they've told me with this. So, excuse me, let me just start off by saying this about the band. I've worked with this band many times. Super cool group of guys, not a lot of ego stuff going on. The drummer and I are really good friends. Of course, I'm good friends with most drummers because I'm a drummer, and he's also a pretty accomplished sound engineer himself. He speaks the language. He's worked in retail for many, many years for stuff like that. He's actually working for a big drum manufacturer now. So he knows the business, you know what I'm saying? He knows what he's talking about, and he has seen... If you hear squeak toys going on and stuff like that, my dog Ryder over here is like living his best life with his squeak ball. So forgive me for that, but I'm not going to really apologize because he's such a big, lovable meathead. I can't I can't get mad at him. So anyway, so the band has their stuff together. They're all inclusive. So they have their own mixer on stage for monitors. They're all ear monitors. They're even using their own mic stands, cables, DIs, the whole 9 yards. And all they do is give a front of house guy a split snake tail. And the house guy, all he has to worry about is front of house. A dream to work with. Like, this is the kind of band every sound guy wants to work with. And they're a really good band on top of it. They don't suck. You know what I'm saying? I've worked with those guys in multiple other bands that they had been in. And they've just always been a pleasure to work with, man. And I just really, really, dig what they're doing. I dig the music that they play. And we're just, we're friends, So he calls me and he's like, man, you're not going to believe what we've had to deal with here recently. And he said, I'm not going to tell you who the venue is because I don't want to put anybody on blast. But he said it's a venue who has a young house sound guy. And this guy, for whatever reason, just cannot seem to get it together. He said, man, he goes, you know us. He goes, we try to make things as easy on the front of house guy as we possibly can. This is a band that when I work with them, I give them a heavy discount because they're all inclusive. You know what I'm saying? I mean, to the best of my ability, I try to give them the most reasonable price that I can possibly give them because my job, I'm just doing racks and stacks and mixing front of house. I mean, so they even have their own lights, you know what I mean? Like when that's required, the venue that's in question here has in-house lights. So, he's like, look, man, we go in, we get set up, the sound guy's at the bar acting like, they're not even there. He's eating his dinner, drinking a beer. They respect that, and wait till he's done eating. The band is set up and ready for sound check. We're kind of getting close to downbeat, time. And he goes over and says something to the guy like, hey, man, maybe we can do a line check or a sound check here or whatever. Apparently the guy had a big fat attitude about that. I mean, maybe he didn't want to do it at that very second or something, or maybe he just was having I don't know. I don't know what the situation was. Nevertheless, when they do actually start sound check, he said this guy did sound check for 45 minutes. 45 minutes. So now let me paint that picture for those of you who don't understand the significance of that. In the bars and the nightclubs that we work in the middle market, we call them, most of them are what we call menu venues, which means it's a sports bar. There's people sitting there eating dinner. Many times there's whole families of people. A lot of these places allow children in there until like 7, 8 o'clock at night or whatever. So I mean, you usually have a room full of people. So when you go to do sound check, if your sound check is really longer than about 5 minutes or 10 minutes or something, I mean, 10 minutes is a long time. Basically in these scenarios, especially if you're a house guy, so you should know your system, you should have everything, should have a start scene that's like 95% there and all that kind of stuff. I remember when I was a house guy at a menu venue like this, it was a big menu venue, but we were still technically a menu venue. Our sound checks took like 5 minutes at the most. We're basically just doing a line check, and then I'd have the band play like a verse and a chorus or something so I can kind of hear it in context. But I'm really just I'm going to shape the mix in the first 3 or 4 or 5 songs of the first set. That's where all the magic is going to happen at, not at the sound check. I just need to make sure everything's where it's supposed to be. Well, apparently this guy felt like he needed to shape the mix and to do this and to do that and experiment with the band and all this other kind of crazy stuff. And the band is there kind of like, there's this awkward, tense vibe going on because everybody in the place is sick and tired of hearing sound check. Like we've had kick drum for 5 minutes, you know what I'm saying? And, or something like that, or guitar for, 10 minutes. Like that is insane. All you're doing is driving people out of the place, the dinner crowd. You're driving the dinner crowd, which is extremely lucrative for all of these middle market, rooms. You're driving them right out of the place. Bartenders are mad because the patrons are mad because the patrons aren't tipping now because of the junk with all that. Then to add insult to injury, the guy comes to the stage and starts talking about how horrible they sound. Like, their guitar sound is horrible. He's struggling with the bass, all this kind of stuff. to a point to where at one point after they finished Soundcheck, they kind of went to the bar to kind of catch their breath and try to digest some of this. And they look up, and there's the house sound guy up there messing with the guitar player's guitar amp. Like, dude, talk about the unforgivable sin. Dude, here it is. No guitar player wants anybody messing with their stuff, not even a really good sound guy. Like, I'm pretty well respected in this, in my market, and I would never go to your guitar amp and mess with it. I am the kind of guy that would, if I'm mixing you and your guitar sounds like, turd in, turd out. You know what I'm saying, man? That's just kind of the way the mix works. I'm not there to shape your tone. I'm not there to, do anything more but than to make you louder. Maybe sprinkle a little bit of pixie dust on it to, make it just a little bit better. But I can't recreate your guitar tone in front of house, nor should I. That's a huge no-no. We're in sound reinforcement, not sound recreation. So we're just taking what you're giving us and making it louder, basically. Now, obviously, every good sound guy has his own little toolbox of tricks and things that he can do to sort of kind of make things less sucky, but you can't recreate something. So if a guitar player or a bass player, like I run into it with a lot of bass players too, where they just have no definition in their sound. It's just all low end fuzz, and that sort of thing. And maybe a little bit of a clicky high end or something in it. If that's your sound and that's what your fans are used to, all I'm going to do is turn it up. That's not a hill worth dying over, dude. That's not a battle worth fighting. I'm not going to argue with any musician about what they should be doing in terms of tone. Now, with that being said, I am also the guy that a lot of those musicians respect me, and they'll come to me and they'll ask me for help. They'll ask me, hey, what do you think about my guitar tone? Hey, what do you think about my bass tone? What do you think about my drums? How does my vocal tone sound? Am I doing okay or am I flat? Because sometimes in the heat of the moment, it's hard to really judge those things. That's why I always recommend bands to videotape as much of their shows as they can so they can go and critique it and try to, make it the best it can be. Because when you look at that video on Monday from Saturday's show, as a band, you can see that now from the audience perspective, and you can see it from a little different view. So because a lot of guys don't do that, they'll ask me, or they'll ask someone like me that is respected in the community, and then we'll give our honest opinion, in a general respective kind of way. If their tone sucks, it's like, well, I think we could probably work on your guitar tone a little bit. I think this is what I'm hearing. I don't ever tell them how to go to their amp physically and fix it, because that's their responsibility to learn their gear and to learn how to get from A to B. It's my responsibility to be honest with them when they ask me and say, well, it just seems like it's a little bright, or it feels kind of thin. It doesn't really it's not as thick or as warm or as fat as I think it could really be, especially if I see them playing like quality instruments, like they're playing an American-made Les Paul or Strat or something like that, or a Tele, and they're running through, a EC30, or they're running through a Marshall, or where I know that there's, even some of the direct input stuff where they're running through like an Axis, or something like that, a Fractal. I'm trying to think of these things now off the top of my head. The Fractal, and then what's the Kemper is the other one. That's good quality stuff. I'm not a huge fan of the Helix Line 6 stuff, but I know guys that use them and they sound like $1,000,000. I know 1,000 other guys that use them and they sound like dog water, but you're the guitar player, dude. I'm the sound guy. I'm going to work with whatever you give me, okay? That's what we get paid to do. We get paid to make it work, to make it happen. But if you come to me and you ask for my opinion, I will give you my opinion. How to fix that in your own gear is your responsibility. I'm never going to lay a hand on your gear. I'm never going to go over there and tell you, hey, you should boost this and cut that and try this, or, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, I know a bunch of those tricks. I mean, I'm a drummer, but I've been around this long enough to know some of the things that get you from point A to point B. If it's super bright, put a 30-foot, XLR on it, or a 30-foot quarter inch on it. Those longer cables will sometimes chop off some of that brightness. and fatten you up a little bit. There's a lot of little tricks like that you can do. Sometimes I'll suggest that, depending on how well they're treating me. If they're treating me with love and respect, then I'll give them all the tips I can give them. But I'm never going to go to their gear and touch their gear. I'm never going to. So anyways, so this guy's, jacking with my buddy's guitar rig. He goes and runs up on the stage. He's like, dude, what are you doing, man? He's like, well, man, your guitar just sounds this or sounds that. And I thought I'd just come up and fix it for you. And he's like, dude, there's nothing wrong with my guitar tone. What's wrong is you don't know how to translate that to front of house in an intelligent way. I hear my guitar tone in my ear monitors. I hear it coming from the amp. He plays like a small combo amp. He's not super loud on stage or anything like that. But they kind of had a little tiff. Had a little, what I will call progressive conversation, about that. And rightfully so. Rightfully so. I literally have hundreds of thousands of shows to my credit, and not once can I ever remember a time where I put my fingers on somebody else's gear. I had a bass player buddy of mine many, many years ago, played for a corporate band that I was working with, who asked me to come and physically look at his amp with him. I think that is the only time, and him and I were standing there together. He was playing. I was making some adjustments on his amp because he had asked me to do that. And I'd only done that because him and I were really close, If it's somebody that I barely know or something like that, I'm kind of like, this is what I'm hearing. Try to go fix it. Try to make the adjustments on your own. I don't ever want to have my hands on someone else's gear. So, nevertheless, so that was the whole thing. Apparently, the gig itself did not go great. The mix was not great. They went to their agent, which was the right thing to do, after the show, and said, hey, this guy's like super problematic, man. He's a real issue. I think the agent said something to the owner at that point. The next time they went back, pretty much the same scenario. 45-minute sound check. People were going nuts trying to eat dinner here with sound check going on, all that sort of thing. The guy didn't touch anybody's amps the second time around, but it was pretty hideous, and the guy just did not know what he was doing. Yeah. So then at that point, the band themselves at the end of the night said something to management, and said, hey, look, if we're going to have to continue to work with this guy, this isn't going to work. We're just not going to come back because this guy is not giving us anything to work with. Front of house mix is horrible. We would love to bring our own guy and bring our own sound engineer. Management agreed to that and said, okay, yeah, no problem. You're welcome to bring your own guy. So now third show they're coming back. They bring their own guy. He comes in, no problem. Works his way through the mix, do sound check. They had like a 5-10 minute sound check, like a normal sound check. Everything went off fine, and the house guy just threw an absolute conniption fit about the whole thing. Literally tried to get in the way of their sound guy doing his job, was barking in his ear, it was just a bad scene, man. Really, really bad scene. And my scope of dealing with staff and dealing with, that sort of problem, my gut instinct is I would fire this guy in a second. I would send him walking on his ass and like, dude, go somewhere else and figure it out. Because we can't have this. But here's the other side of that conversation. If you're dealing with a bar owner who doesn't want to pay legitimate money to have a legitimate guy in place, then the bar owner's the one to blame, not the sound guy. Now, you can blame the sound guy for all his stupid junk that he did to you while you were there, but the responsibility really falls on the bar owner. It really falls on management to put a competent person in place to be able to make people happy and to get things where they need to be there. You know what I mean? I always remind myself of that. You know what I mean? When I'm doing that sort of thing, I always try to tell myself, look, the sound guy's doing the best he can do if he doesn't have an attitude, okay? If the guy's got a good attitude and he's just genuinely struggling, I will, if it's really super bad, I will probably go in and offer to help. My situation is most people in the Mid-Atlantic know me. So, because I've been working this area for a long, long time. So, if I walk into a scenario like that with my band, typically those guys will come to me and ask me my opinion and ask how I can help them do what they do better. And if they have a humble heart, I'll happily do that. Once we get through sound check and I get all my responsibilities with the band done first, and there's time left over, I'll walk over to the console with them and I'll take a look at their mix and I'll point out the obvious things that are wrong and tell them why they're wrong and not degrade them, not talk down to them or anything like that, but just genuinely be a decent human being to them, to someone who genuinely wants to learn. So yeah, so I mean that's kind of how I deal with that. If they don't want my input, that's fine. I usually always run monitors with my own band. Even if we're on wedges, I'll bring a split snake and stuff. I'll run our own wedges and make sure we can hear on stage. If we can hear on stage, we're happy. Whatever it is out front is what that audience is used to hearing because this is a guy that mixes bands every week. You got to take that into account too. I think you got to really get good at picking and choosing your battles in these situations. Because you could be trying to die on a hill that's not worth dying on. You know, like I can remember another story from a drummer buddy of mine that was playing a community concert series, and that township. In fact, I just had a conversation with that township about 2 weeks ago, and they've about going and working, their events. They had contacted me last year about that, and we just couldn't seem to, work things out in the contract. But I reached out to them again this year, and they said they've already got everything, booked and taken care of. Production's already taken care of. And the problem is they don't want to pay anything. They're a typical client who wants you to assume all the risk, and they assume no risk, and then they want to pay you the absolute bare minimum to do it. So by that, what I mean is they only want to pay a guy to come out and do an outdoor show where it may or may not rain, no roof over the stage. They want to pay him $300 a gig, which is complete bull butter. That gig should at least be paying $800, $1,200 or something like that. And then if it rains, they want to be like, oh well, I guess it rained, so we're not gonna do it today. And then you lose the date, you don't get paid. There's no kind of security whatsoever. Whatever staff you had set in place to go handle that gig is now screwed. We're all screwed in that scenario. So something to be said for that. You know what I mean? So that's really where we couldn't kind of come to agreement on. But my buddy was at this show, former associate, I'll put it that way, former acquaintance, because we don't really talk much anymore. And he was saying that they went through sound check, and the guys, when they showed up, the guy only had very minimal gear there. He was using a lot of PV front of house stuff, and not like really cool PV stuff, kind of like really low end DJ level. Particle board kind of, PV carpeted boxes. And there just wasn't a whole lot going on in front of house. So they start sound check. The guy asks for kick. He gives him kick. That goes on for 5 seconds. He says, okay, snare, and he's moving on. And my buddy's like, there's no kick. He gets on the mic. He's like, hey, man. He said, can you come up here? He calls the guy up there. He's like, look, dude. He goes, you're saying the kick is good. He goes, I'm not hearing any kick at all. That starts a whole conflict between the two of them. Basically, the guy didn't have enough gear, didn't have enough resources on site to be able to give this guy what he's used to getting. Because his band carries their own sound system that they could have loaded in themselves, it's sitting in a parking lot in a trailer, and could have done 1,000 times better than what this hired guy is doing. So there's that. The saddest thing about those situations is if that production company's actually getting paid decent money and that's the product he brings out. And I've seen that a million times. I've seen guys getting the $800 to $1,200 thing, for a 12 or 13 show summer concert series, and just bring complete junk to the gig. Like, it's nuts, dude. It's nuts. Um, so you got to kind of pick and choose your battles. You know, when I'm in that situation, had that been me there and we did kick, and I know there's no kick, I would have known when I was loading in I was not going to get any kick. When I seen what they had set up for front of house, okay, we're not going to get a chest pounding kick today. You know, I just kind of would have went with it. You know, I wouldn't have made an issue of it. But this guy has a history of, you know, kind of being a crybaby and you know, bringing a lot of drama to the table if he doesn't get his way. And you know, he's typical egotistical drummer who feels like the kick needs to be the most important thing in the mix, and blah blah blah. And it was an absolute mess. That was the long and short of that scenario. It was a mess. And you know, the sound guy, you piss off your sound guy, he's he's not going to do you any favors, dude. You know what I'm saying? You know, and I think they played the entire gig with very little drums in front of house. Gee, I wonder why. You know, that gig was mainly guitars, keyboards, and vocals. I was not working with them at the time because I used to work for that band. But yeah, dude, pick and choose your battles, man. You know, and let me say this to all my house sound guy buddies that are getting it right. I love you. You are my people. None of what I have said over the last week and a half in the short form videos and in today's long form videos are directed toward you, because I know you're getting it right, and I know you're doing the right thing, and I know you're going to have a bunch of horror stories to tell about bands and some of their stupidity, because believe me, there's no end to that either. The only reason I'm even talking about this, guys, look, let's just be real. I'm a content creator. I'm trying to give you what you want. Is I repetitively, almost every other day, I'm getting messages from people telling me, or comments, you know, telling me absolute horror stories about, you know, sound guys that were just jerks, that had big egos and no skills to back it up. You know, it's one thing to have an ego and be able to back it up. It's another thing to have an ego and be an arrogant prick and you just don't have the skills to back that up. Then you really look like a horse's ass. You know what I'm saying? So that's why we're having this conversation. You know, I have talked about this till I'm blue in the face over the last, you know, 2 or 3 years of doing the Grumpy Sound Guy. And it's a subject that never gets old. And hit me up in the comments section. You take a look at the comments section on this video and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Hit me up in the comments section and let's hear from you. Let me hear your house sound guy horror story, and I'll guarantee you it'll blow up. You know, it just does. Go over to Facebook and you know, TikTok, and look at those short form videos over there, and look at the comment sections in there. It's just comment after comment after comment after comment of guys that just, would you please talk about this? You know, I can show you my inbox where guys are literally messaging me and saying, this is what I dealt with last night. You think you can address this? And it's like, I have addressed this like, you know, 4 or 5 times in the last 2 or 3 years. But, you know, hey, if it's what you want to hear, it's what we can continue to talk about. But like I said, you know, in the upcoming shorts, I think we are going to flip the script and we are going to start talking about some of the sound guys that are really getting it right and their horror stories of dealing with bands who really thought they were somebody they weren't, or thought they knew something they didn't. The biggest mistake that I see, and I'll leave you with this, the biggest mistake I see with bands is they come in and think they can do my job better than me. Especially if I'm a house guy and like I know the room, like I know the resonant frequencies in the room, I know where all the problems are in the system. Like this is my room, you know, and that's what a good house sound guy should. Those are the skills he brings to the table. So you're not going to come into my room and tell me how to mix better than me. I mix, at the last room where I was a house sound guy at, I was mixing 150, 60 shows a year in that room. You're not going to tell me how to mix that room better than I'm already mixing it. Dude, my ears work too. You know, if you want to be Captain Obvious and, you know, try to exercise your dominance of sound knowledge, I'm just going to laugh you off, dude, and, you know, smile and nod or whatever, and totally dismiss you, because it's just rude. That's just rude. You know, I mean, come on. You know, don't walk into every house gig assuming that the house guy's an idiot. That's a epic fail of a mistake. Because I will promise you with everything in me that will not turn out the way you want it to turn out. Yeah. And I'll just leave you with that. I love you guys. Thank you for the support. Um, like I said at the beginning of the video, if you really dig this content and you really want to, come to the table, become an insider, join the paid side of the YouTube channel. You can subscribe for about the cost of a cup of coffee at Starbucks, per month. And then you get an inner look at my world, an inner look at what is going on in my life and in CLP audio and staging's career path, and we talk a lot deeper on these kind of subjects than what we do just on the surface here on the public side. So consider that. I hope you guys are having a wonderful January. I'll see you next week.